Alright, welcome back to State of the Division. This week we have UFC 290, 10 away from 300, which we should hit pretty early into next year. And this honestly might be the best card of the year, unless Stipe eventually ends up fighting. In that case, nothing will beat that, despite how bad of a fight it likely will be. On this fight, we have, again, 2 title fights, which always is good. Robbie Lawler's retirement fight, which, again, Robbie Lawler's owed our attention for how long he's fought and how many good fights he's put up. That's also a prove-it fight for Nico Price. We have Nickal coming back from crotch shotting to a win. We have a few other interesting fights on the main card. Whittaker, Plessis, I'm far too invested in, mostly because I've been fairly impressed with Plessis, although that's not exactly a super high bar for me. I love Chris Curtis as well, and I've also loved a bunch of guys who don't have great records in the UFC. That being said, I think we jump right in and we start off with the early prelims. Opening us off, the 12-5 Camuela, the Jawaiian Kirk, who wins honestly best ring name tonight in my opinion, who looks for the quick rebound against 11-1 Esteban El Gringo Ribovix. Ribovix is 2 years younger at 27. He has an inch or none heading his way as well in height, but 6 inches of reach do roll Kirk's way. Now Kirk is 2-1 in the UFC so far, rolling with a 2.99 to 5.10 in striking and a .86 takedown average. It's a little hard to get a read on him in all honesty with those numbers, but in his one win, he took it to decision with a narrow striking lead and 3 submission attempts. He was taken down 5 times for 6 minutes of control, but it seems like he was able to survive on the ground if he couldn't get up initially. Outside the UFC, he was more of a finisher with 5 KO and 6 submission wins in his career. So there is some submission threat there, but I don't know about his takedown game. Ribovix is also coming off a loss in his first official fight, but does carry a 4.79 to 3.90 in striking. 3.09 in striking, with a 0.00 flat with his takedowns. Career-wise, he is also a finisher, 6 KO to 5 submission, though his last submission win was in 2019. Once again, a bit up in the air with his takedowns, but based on his loss to Yaghyra, oh god, I would warn he plays off his back well enough. However, on a negative note, he was taken down 11 times for 7 minutes and 39 seconds of ground control in that fight. So while he may be able to survive on the ground, he certainly does not thrive. Now the favorite here is Ribovix, and to open up week, I'm going to agree. I don't love Kirk here. I don't see a lot of takedown game. His striking is not great. He is 2 losses, 1 win in the UFC. Ribovix is a little more behind him, bumping him up. He has that better striking total, and while he was taken down 11 times, I don't see Kirk shooting many takedowns on Ribovix. 12-7, Shannon, the Turkish Delight Ross, looks for a rebound against 8-2, Jesus Santos Aguilar. Aguilar is 7 years younger, but does surrender 2 in height and 4 in reach. Ross has not been too successful in the UFC. Based on his fights, he likes to swang and bang on the feet. In his career, he's not 6 KO wins, 1 submission win, and 5 decision wins. With this type of fighter, there's a pretty obvious chance of getting KO'd, but you also see him lose 3 times by decision, which makes me think personally that there are some opponents that are just able to outpace him and outwork him in those later rounds on the feet. Aguilar looks completely different. He seems to be an entirely ground-focused fighter. He does have a limited UFC stat pool. From the numbers I was able to see, he was willing to shoot takedowns or play from his back. So there is that obvious preference for takedown. Outside the UFC, he rocks 6 submission wins with 0 KO and 2 decision. He does like to go for the finish in almost all of his fights, but they don't tend to go on too long since he seems to either get it early or lose the fight by decision. Vegas likes Aguilar, and I will agree. I always tend to default to ground-heavy fighters, and Ross has not been too successful in the UFC. This feels like a prove-it fight for Aguilar. If he puts up a great performance and wins, getting either a quick finish or a dominating 3-round fight, this feels like a prove-it fight for him. I don't have a whole lot of data on Aguilar, which does make me tentative, but Ross just hasn't looked good in the UFC. He hasn't really put together much for me to be confident in and to go forward with. Time for a quick breakdown, because I'm pretty sure this is a last-minute reschedule. Cameron Simon takes on Terrence Terrible Mitchell. My pick here is Simon, and most of that is due to the late replacement of Mitchell, and also the fact that despite Simon having a 42% takedown defense, which isn't great, he has proven the ability to reverse position and take time from his opponents in fights. This also helps considering Mitchell is a bit of a ground threat given his submission record and kind of appearances outside the UFC. So I do feel this fight is closer than the original fight with Rodriguez. I think Simon's striking and ability to reverse the ground give him the edge here. Ending off our early prelims, rather early. 8-0, Vitor Petrino looks to stay perfect against 16-6, Marcin Prachnio. Prachnio. Petrino is 9 years younger with 3 inches of reach going his way, but either 1 inch or dead even height going Prachnio's way. Petrino comes in as a striker with what looks to be a solid takedown game. In the UFC, he rocks a 3-4-3 to 2-1-6 with definite KO power, seen in those 6 career KO wins. He did take 6 minutes of ground control off 7 takedowns with 1 submission attempt, though I don't know how big a part of the game that is. That fight felt more like an outlier than an overall tracking point for him. Prachnio is another heavy striker, but there doesn't seem to be the same takedown heavy game. He rocks a 5-7-0 to 3-2-6 in striking with KO power in his repertoire, 11 career KO wins, though only 1 in the UFC. Now obviously with all this, he has to be able to KO in some matchups, though there have been issues with him taking down, and he does only have a 62% takedown defense, which has helped him keep in fights a few times, but it is a 62% takedown defense, and against high output guys, that doesn't work too well. Now Vegas likes Petrino, and I will agree, mostly based on the fact that Martina has a 62% takedown defense. That doesn't go well against high output guys. I think if Petrino takes him down, that kind of spells disaster. That spells control time. That spells possible submission attempt. That spells ground and pound. That just spells bad things for Marciana.
13-0, Tatsuro Tyra takes on the 10-4 Edgar Chagas, another late addition to this card. Now, I am going to run with Tyra on this. Most of this quick decision is based on Chagas' poor takedown defense and the ability for Tyra to go to the ground with consistency, and a prevalent submission ability with 7 career submission wins. Additionally, in his UFC outings, Chagas was outstruck heavily, while Tyra has shown the decent striking with that ground game giving him the edge in my mind. Could Chagas win? Yes, but everything in this fight shows me Tyra has the edge, plus the unbeaten streak tends to give fighters a bit of a push.
Opening up our prelims, there's a familiar match. 12-3-1, Jimmy the Brute Crute. Rematches, 13-3-1, Alonzo Atomic Menifield. Crute is 8 years younger, 2 inches taller, but he does surrender 2 inches in reach. Now, Crute's very much a ground-focused fighter. He has a 5.19 takedown average, but also goes for the finish with relative consistency. 5 KO, 4 submission, 3 decision wins in his career. So, in addition to the submission threat, he also can stack the takedowns for some serious ground control time. Now, he does rock a 3.67 to 3.04 in striking, which isn't too surprising with ground-focused fighters, but in that regard, he does run with some power, more so than technique or active on the feet work. It is worth noting that he has been matched on the ground and survived long enough to be KO'd several times. Menifield, on the other hand, is a finisher. Very much the power punching direction with 10 career KO wins and a 3.88 to 3.04 in striking. He does have a solid chin as well, which does help with his style and enable him to fight like this consistently. He does have a 0.67 takedown average, but it seems more like a game plan or situational part of his game over a consistent presence, so I don't spend too much time looking at it. His takedown defense is a solid 75%, but Crute did take him down 6 times in their previous fight, which does matter. For the rematch here, Vegas has it even. Both sides are favored. I believe Menifield is the narrow favorite. However, I am going to run with Crute despite Menifield always being a finishing threat. Crute took him down 6 times, and while the argument can easily be made, and I think I've even made this argument, that if fighters had time to adjust, come back with a better game plan, and come face him harder, Crute's had the same time, and I think with a ground-focused fighter like Crute, who's always a high-output takedown, who's always pushing the takedowns, I don't think there's much you can game plan for unless you rapidly improve your takedown defense or catch him early. While that is a threat with Menifield, I am going to lean the ground-focused fighter here. 10-0, Yasmin Yaghyra looks to stay perfect against 7-2, Denise D. Gomes. Gomes is a year younger at 23, either an inch or none in height going Yaghyra's way, as long as a definite inch in reach. Yaghyra is pretty new to the UFC, so there's a limited sample size, but in her 2 fights, she has very much shown up as a striker, rocking a 6.35 to 4.23. She also carries 7 career KO wins, so the finishing threat is always looming in the background when she steps up. Currently, she does have a 100% takedown defense in the UFC, which speaks to where she really wants to keep this fight. Gomes, also with a small sample size, looks to be a little more mixed, but still goes for the KO finish like Yaghyra. She carries a 4.67 to 3.13, backed up by a nice 1.19 takedown average, which does pose a good threat in her fights, but doesn't seem to be something that she's always landing with submissions, since she has attempted them, but she's landed none in her career. Her strength is the striking, backed up by this ground and pound grinding kind of takedown game and grappling she has. Now, Vegas likes Yaghyra, and I will agree. Normally I'd go for the higher takedown fighters, but in this case, Yaghyra's takedown defense and Gomes' 33% accuracy make me lean the way of Yaghyra with the higher striking, looming KO threat more consistently than Gomes, who does resemble more so the grinder in this case.
Jack Della Maddalena now fights the 7-0 Josiah Harrell. Now, I am picking Maddalena for this fight, and it is due in part to the fact Harrell is stepping in last minute, and the fact Harrell tends to hang on the feet in a majority of their fights. This is Maddalena's wheelhouse, and while Harrell has some decent takedown ability and submission threat, Maddalena has the solid takedown defense plus the slick and dangerous striking where he can overwhelm and hurt Harrell on the feet and put him away. So in the
ending off our prelims, the retirement fight. 29, 16, 0, and 1, Robbie Ruthless Lawler takes the ring against 15, 6, 0, and 2, Nico the Hybrid Price. Price is 8 years younger at 33, a single inch taller with 2 in reach also heading his way. Now, Lawler is Lawler, a 21-year veteran of the UFC, first fight in 2002, who has been throwing down in the cage every year. Now, his stats have fallen off, but as a fighter, he likes to hang in there with the striking and try with his power for the finish. He can shoot takedowns, but hasn't done so heavily and hasn't landed one since 2019. Now, he carries a 383 to 467 in striking with a .65 takedown average. His power is there, but the issue is that it is now significantly more inconsistent showing up compared to his older days. Now, Price is similar, and incredibly so. 548 to 547 in striking with a .70 takedown average. He also is a power-heavy guy, pulling on that to put them away in order to win. He does seem to struggle against the takedown, but doesn't seem to be all that able to actually prevent the takedown from happening and getting them stacked on him. He has lost a few of his last few fights, and you've kind of seen this against him, where it isn't a one-dimensional game plan, but because he likes to go for the finish, he stands in there, and his chin has been chipped a few times. Now, Vegas likes Price, and I'm going to take the wrong shot probably, and I'm going to pick Lawler. Part of this is stupid fanboy nature, I will fully admit. But Lawler has motivation for this fight. Both fighters do. But Lawler, this is his fight on the way out. He's had several decision losses. He just lost to Maddalena by KO. But I think Lawler's coming into this. I think Lawler has the ability to match Price on the feet. And while I think Lawler has lost some toughness, I think he'll be able to hang in there with Price. And I think he'll be able to either decision Price or get Price to make a mistake and put himself in a bad position to give him the ability to get the finish. So in the end, I am going to take the long shot. I will probably be wrong, but I refuse to pick against him. I'm going to pick Robbie Lawler.
Now, with Tracy and Gore bowing out at the last minute, Bo Nickal now takes on Valentin Woodburn. Woodburn is a different threat than Tracy and Gore, given his KO history and a dangerous striking outside the UFC. I will still roll with Nickal on this, given that he was in a camp beforehand and likely won't be changing his game plan all that much. He'll need to watch out for Woodburn's power and ability to finish fights, but Woodburn will have to put on one hell of a performance to get the shot he needs to win. I still am going to give Nickal the obvious edge, and I am going to give him the win on a quick analysis.
13-6, Jalen the Tarantula Turner looks for the quick rebound against 22-12. Dan the Hangman
back in New Zealand.
Turner is 5 years younger, 3 inches taller, and does take 2 in reach. Turner is a decently rounded finisher in all honesty. Numbers-wise, he rocks a 5'6" to 379 in striking with 9 career KO wins, 4 of those in the UFC. He does tend to take heavy striking leads over his opponents, so it seems to be more of a swarming style where the quantity helps put them away. Does back this up with a .89 takedown average and a decent submission threat, 3 in his last 5 wins, seeming to have found that groove in that way recently. Hooker is shockingly similar, a 4'8" to 4'6" in striking and a consistent KO threat with a high quantity and variety of strikes in his arsenal. He also carries a .85 takedown average, though his last submission win comes in 2017. Another difference is how Hooker does tend to get caught in firefights, and willingly so. On that note, he does happen to get caught with some regularity and put away. He does still have a real solid chin, but getting caught in those firefights, he has met the power punchers. He's met the finishers in that way. Vegas likes Turner, and being boring, I'm going to agree. Part of that is blatant favoritism for Turner. The other logical part is that Turner has the measurable advantages, as well as we've seen in his last few fights, find a new groove with submission ability. Price has always been that kind of swang and bang. I'm going to stand on the feet and I'm going to land my power punches, or I'm going to land my strikes with some variety. Turner can match him in that regard, I feel, and with the added thing of Turner's newfound submission ability and the fact that Turner, I think, is a bit better on the takedowns than Hooker, I think Hooker gets caught here, and I think Turner has the advantage. The last spot before the title fights goes to 24-6, Robert the Reaper Whittaker. looking to bury the hopes of another contender in 19-2. Driscus still knocks du Plessis. Du Plessis is 3 years younger, with either 1 inch or none going his way in height, but 3 inches in reach definitely going his way. Whittaker is Whittaker, and like other notable long-standing fighters on this card, that basically sums up his entire game. To actually do my self-imposed job, though, he carries a solid stat spread of 4.48 to 3.26 in striking, and a pretty consistent takedown game of 0.82. Whittaker is remarkably consistent in all aspects in regards to his striking, with it serving as a constant pressure where he is capable of taking the lead, holding onto it throughout the entire fight, while also mitigating what his opponent can do with his defense and disruptive takedown game that lets him dictate pace and timing. Du Plessis has been a bit more of a finisher in the UFC, with a 6.72 to 3.73 in striking and a 2.83 takedown average. I am willing to say his takedown average might be slightly inflated to a 6 takedown performance over Darren Till, who has never been great at defending those, but as a whole, it is very much a game plan or matchup choice for him. He is a pretty big submission threat, with 1 in the UFC so far and 10 total in his career. Striking is also a bit of the heavy output style, but it feels like his power is more so lurking in there. He'll land a bunch of shots, but the power shot's what gets you. It's not so much the accumulation that puts you away. Vegas likes Whittaker here, to no one's surprise, but honestly, I'm a little nervous in this fight. I am going to, in the end, pick Whittaker because I think it'd be foolish to pick against him with how much skill he has and what he's shown and all the contenders he's fought along the way. But du Plessis gives me pause, mostly because we've seen him struggle early in fights and then come back strong, rebound quick, or come back and win almost immediately. And I think he has a weird kind of... He has that power looking in the wings that I talked about. He has a striking style that, while it doesn't necessarily match Whittaker's, it is similar in some regard. I also am willing to say that his takedown game is... I always understate it, because when I've watched him fight, it's never great, but he is capable of stacking takedowns when he gets one. I do think Whittaker wins because Whittaker's handed, I think, better takedown fighters in Vettori, but I do think that du Plessis could have a solid chance here and might give Whittaker some issues in the first round. For the co-main event, 21-6-2, Brandon Assassin Baby Moreno looks to keep his belt against the 25-5 Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja. Moreno is 4 years younger, 2 inches taller, and taking 3 in reach. Now, Moreno is a fighter who definitely brings pace to his fights, and that definitely plays into his style. In striking, he carries a 3.55 to 3.19, which isn't great, but it's bolstered by the variety of his strikes and the knockout power he's able to call on at times. I will say it's not automatic, but he definitely has been able to get timing down and take advantage of opportunities when they are there, however minuscule they may be. His takedown game is the major highlight in my opinion. He has a 1.80 average and the ability to generate chunks of control time off those takedowns. Also, a submission threat, which adds another wrinkle for his opponents to plan around and work around. Pantoja is a little similar when it comes to the takedown game, a 1.37 average, but unlike Moreno, he has gotten more submission wins in the UFC, which does speak to his aggressiveness with the takedowns and control. Striking sits at a 4.25 to 3.38, and while it does seem to have power in some degree, I don't necessarily see the same variety as Moreno's. I think Pantoja takes the lead in power, Moreno takes a little more variety. Now, Moreno's the favorite, and Vegas has it closer than I thought it would. But after sitting for this on a bit, I'm honestly torn. I actually wrote this one last. In the end, Moreno is my pick. Partially because I'm riding a little bit of that high from watching him fight a few dozen times. But also, I think Moreno's adjustments and ability to adjust fight to fight, and that sort of chunks of control time he can generate, the striking that he can do, Moreno can do a lot, which I think gets in fighters' head. And when Pantoja is this constant kind of lurking threat to knock out, to finish, I think Moreno's faced that before. So I think he has an idea of how to manage it. And now Pantoja, to give him full props, 100% could win this fight. He is a threat on the ground, and that's somewhere where Moreno likes to go. And on the feet, we've seen him hang in there, and we've seen him finish, we've seen him match. So in the end, I am going to pick Moreno, but I want to put an asterisk and say I would not be surprised if Pantoja wins. I think Moreno will. I think Moreno has the skills and the tools, but I think Pantoja is a dangerous fighter here. For the main event, 25-2, Alexander the Great Volkanovski looks to continue his dominance against the challenger, 16-3-0-1, Yaghyra El Pantera Rodriguez. Rodriguez is 4 years younger, 5 inches taller, with even reach across the board. Volkanovski is best described as a just-win kind of fighter. He adjusts his game plan to match his opponent and give himself the best shot to win. Striking is great, 6.35 to 3.40, and seems to be more so the grinding style of striking, where he racks up points, he deals damage without really finishing off of it. This is all backed up with a takedown average of 1.52 and the ability to stack takedowns when it's part of the game plan. I do want to say that he doesn't always get great ground control time off of these, but it helps him control pace and disrupt his opponent's offense. Yaghyra's a little bit of a different story. He rolls with a 4.78 to 4.03, and this does speak to the fact that his striking, in my opinion, sits in this weird spot where you'll see him take leads over opponents like Josh Emmett and Jeremy Stephens, and I mean commanding leads, but does have it super close with fighters like Chan Sung Jung, which was his last second weird elbow up KO win, and Brian Ortega. He did finish in both those fights, meaning his power is there and his ability to get the shot he needs when he needs it is there. So you see his striking is definitely effective, and the KO threat is there to act as an equalizer. But you have to admit it's weird to look at it like that. Additionally, he does carry a 0.79 takedown average, which speaks to something closer to a recovery or game plan over a consistent aspect. Though he is a submission threat without the takedowns, since he has been able to play out of position or even capitalize on mistakes from other fighters. To no one's surprise, Vegas likes Volkanovski, and to less surprise and being boring, I'm going to agree. I'd love to go against Volkanovski here, but I think Volkanovski's a more well-rounded, adjusted fighter compared to Yaghyra. Yaghyra's a finishing machine. He likes hanging in the pocket. He'll work off mistakes on the ground. But I don't think we see Volk make many mistakes. And I think we can see a fight where Volk decides, I don't want to go to the ground against you. I don't think you're the fighter we're matching. I don't think the matchup is what I want. We see Volk adjust all the time. I think this will be a fight that he adjusts against and goes with a different game plan for. That being said, that was my take on UFC 290. It's an exciting card, a lot of potential. The top two fights, I kind of went with Vegas and I picked the winners. But in the end, I think there is a chance we see belts flip. I think we see Plessis put up a good fight against Whittaker. I think Robbie Lawler Price will be a good fight. Both fighters are kind of looking to have the motivation to go out strong. Sprinkled throughout, I think we have tidbits of good fights. We really need to see how some guys pan out. A lot of those are prove-its. But in the end, I like UFC 290 as a card. I think we're going to see two good title fights. But that's all I have. Thank you for watching. Have a great fight.